The smoke that lingers.
Night fell heavy over the ruined west outpost. The fires had died to embers. The screams faded to silence. Only the wind remained, low, constant, threading through the shattered stone like a morning song. Selene sat on the cold steps of the outer wall, her hands still stained with blood. The stars above seemed impossibly distant. Too clean. Too far. She had not removed her armor. Couldn't. It felt like the only thing still holding her together. Cassian lowered himself beside her with a soft grunt, his movements stiff with bruises and exhaustion. He offered a flask of water. She took it silently, drinking in slow, measured sips. "You're bleeding," he said, reaching gently for the cut at her brow. Selene flinched. "Not from pain, from kindness." "It's nothing." "It's something," he replied, dabbing at it with a scrap of cloth. They sat in silence for a long while. Around them, the rebels moved like ghosts through the wreckage, tending fires, comforting the wounded, carrying the dead. General Mara's second-in-command, Joran, had taken command of the recovery. He moved with quiet purpose, giving orders in low tones. No one raised their voice. Even victory felt like a funeral. "They're looking to you," Cassian said softly. Selene stared at the broken gate. The charred remnants of the Dominion's banner. "I'm just trying to keep us from collapsing." "You're doing more than that. You gave them something to believe in." She closed her eyes. Later, Selene wandered through the makeshift infirmary, a hollowed-out grain hall lit by lanterns and prayer candles. The wounded lay on straw mats, wrapped in bandages, some still murmuring fevered dreams. A young girl sat beside her brother's cot, holding his hand. An old man whispered thanks to the stars. A healer sang softly to a soldier missing both legs. Selene knelt beside one cot, where a boy no older than 15 slept, his arm crushed and splinted. He had carried messages through the outpost under fire. She reached out and adjusted the blanket over his chest. A whispered voice spoke behind her. "They would follow you into the fire." Meaven stood in the doorway, shadowed by the flicker of candlelight. Her blade was still at her hip, but for once her tone held no sharpness. "Then I need to make sure there's still something left on the other side," Selene murmured. Meaven crossed the room, pausing beside her. "You think this was the end of a battle? But it's only the beginning of your burden." Selene didn't respond. Meaven's eyes softened, barely. "Sleep tonight. Or you'll start thinking you're invincible. That's how leaders die." Then she was gone. Selene found herself back atop the tower near midnight. Cassian waited for her there, cloaked against the wind. He didn't speak. Just opened his arms. She stepped into them. They held each other for a long time, wordless, motionless, wrapped in silence and smoke. No fire. No blade. Just the thudding of hearts and the weight of survival. When Selene finally spoke, her voice cracked like old stone. "I thought I'd feel joy. I thought this would taste like victory." Cassian kissed her temple. "Victory is bitter before it's earned." She turned into his embrace. And for the first time since the rebellion began, she let herself cry. The wind carried the scent of ash and hope across the ruined city. In the quiet that followed fire, something else began to grow, resolve.
The Warden's call.
The incense in the Warden's chamber was not sweet. It was charred myrrh and ironroot, ground and burned in long black bowls that lined the stone walls. The smoke coiled in lines, never drifting free. Dominion discipline controlled everything, even air. High Warden Cauldron stood before the flame-etched seal of the triumvirate. His armor was unmarked obsidian, his helm gripped in one gauntleted fist. Bald, pale, and statue still, he stared down at the blood-stained map on the long command table. "They've struck the outpost," said the officer kneeling at his feet. "The Westgate district has collapsed into full defection. Militants. Civilians. Temple breakers." Cauldron did not move. The flame of the incense caught the sharp angles of his cheekbones. Cauldron turned his head slowly. His voice was flat. "Belief is not truth. Truth does not waver. Find her. Yes, Warden. Another officer stepped forward. This one bore a scar across his face, earned during the purge of Hollow Spire, and worn with pride. Shall we call for reinforcements from the Citadel? Cauldron's fingers twitched once. No. He finally lifted his eyes to the ranks of armored soldiers gathered in the chapel beyond the chamber's open doors. 200, at least. All arrayed in black and red, helms polished, faces unreadable. We do not ask for help, he said. We cleanse. That is our charge. He stepped away from the table. Bring them in. 2 guards opened the chapel's inner gate. From a side corridor, 12 men and women were dragged forward, bound at the wrists, ragged, hollow-eyed. Some had bruises. One limped. All bore the same brand scorched into their skin, a broken flame. Cauldron faced the gathered troops, his voice rising like steel hammered on steel. These are the soft hearts that fed the rot. The ones who whispered her name. Who passed bread to rebels. Who let children speak of lions. He gestured. The prisoners were shoved to their knees. Mercy was tried. Mercy failed. Mercy breeds corruption. He drew a short-bladed officer's sword, not the heavy glaive he wore in battle, but something personal. Ritualistic. He knelt beside the first prisoner, an older woman, silent but weeping. Without ceremony, he pressed the blade to her chest and drove it in. She slumped without sound. The second tried to speak. He didn't let him. The third screamed. He didn't flinch. By the time the last body hit the chapel floor, the blood had pooled at his feet, steaming in the cold. Cauldron rose. This city is ash and guilt. It forgets the order that binds it. But we do not forget. He looked to the front row, to his captains, to the silent, breathing weapons that served beneath him. We are not soldiers. We are judgment. We are clarity made flesh. He turned to the black banners that lined the walls, the sigil of the Warden's glaive, a sword piercing a kneeling figure. The rebels think fire makes them pure. But fire without discipline is chaos. It is weakness. He pointed toward the west. There is a girl who calls herself Flame. She thinks rebellion will crown her. That fear will falter. He took his helm and locked it into place, a smooth hiss of steel. Show her what fear really looks like. The soldiers slammed gauntlets to breastplates in perfect rhythm. Once. Twice. Show them the weight of order. The gate to the courtyard opened. Outside, war wagons rumbled and hissed. Dominion banners flared in the wind. Horns began to blow, not like rebel calls, but like warnings before a storm. Cauldron mounted the stairs beside the outer wall and looked across the ruined skyline of the lower districts. Smoke curled into the dawn. Somewhere, faintly, he could hear singing. Ragged. Rebellious. He said nothing. Just raised one hand. And pointed toward the smoke.
The response.
Morning arrived with no sunlight. Only the sky, heavy with smoke and ash, greeted the battered remnants of the rebellion. In the west outpost's remains, the taste of soot clung to every breath. But no one rested. Selene stood in the shattered command hall with Cassian, Merrow, and Joran. A map of the city lay spread before them, smudged with ash, blood, and sweat. Joran tapped the northern quadrant. Scouts say Dominion warbands are regrouping here. 5 caravans arrived under cover of darkness. Supplies. Troops. They'll strike soon, Merrow said, pacing like a caged blade. Not to reclaim the outpost, to make an example of it. Burn it to the ground and salt the rubble. Cassian ran a hand through his hair. And with it, every civilian who's come here seeking protection. Selene nodded slowly. They want fear to do what their swords couldn't. She turned to Joran. Double the watch. I want a fallback tunnel through the well vaults cleared by dusk. Joran saluted and moved. Merrow arched an eyebrow. Clever. But defensive. You're not planning to hold this place forever. No, Selene said. But we make them bleed for it. Enough to delay their next step. Enough for the people watching to decide who they believe in. Later, Selene met with a group of runners returning from the far districts. Their news was grim. She read the proclamations in silence, then handed them back. "Let them say what they want," she murmured. "The fire's already out of their hands." Cassian stepped forward, eyes narrowed. "But their retaliation will be ruthless." Selene looked to the distant skyline, to the towers of the citadel still untouched, still watching. "Then so must we be." By evening, Meven returned from the rebel sympathizer network with another report. "They've begun rounding up suspicious citizens in the mid-districts," she said grimly. "Public trials. Fast executions. They're making martyrs out of anyone who even looks like they whispered your name." Selene's jaw tightened. "Then it's time we remind the people why they whispered it in the first place." She looked around at the room, soot-covered faces, weary eyes, hearts full of ash and defiance. "Tomorrow, we strike again. Not to win. Not yet. But to remind them we're still alive." She paused, then added, "and that we are not afraid." Outside, the firelight flickered across the crumbled walls. And in the hearts of the people, resistance burned hotter than ever.
Beneath the ashen sky.
The wind carried dust through the crumbled tower, its open arches framing the night sky like broken cathedral windows. Selene climbed the narrow stairwell, the stone slick with soot and ash. Her legs ached. Her ribs bruised. The blood on her gloves was dry now, but it hadn't all been hers. She stepped into the ruined lookout and found Cassian already there. He stood near the edge, watching the city burn in silence. Fires dotted the lower districts, some theirs, some the Dominion's. The stars above were faint behind the smoke, but present. Defiant. Like them. He turned as she entered, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The quiet between them was a presence, heavy, crackling with everything they'd carried but never said. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. Selene walked to him and looked out over the city. "I needed to see it from here. To remember why we fight." Cassian's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "To remember that we're still human?" Selene met his gaze. "That we still feel. Still bleed. Still burn." The space between them closed like breath drawn in. Cassian reached out slowly, brushing a streak of ash from her cheek. His fingers lingered there, warm against her skin. "We could die tomorrow," he said softly. Selene's eyes didn't flinch. "Then let us live tonight." He kissed her like a man falling. Not with haste, but with hunger, the kind that builds beneath armor, behind walls, until it must be answered. Selene kissed him back with the fire of someone who had nothing left to lose, only something left to claim. Her hands found his shoulders, his jaw, the back of his neck, memorizing the lines of him. They pulled each other into the center of the tower, into the remnants of stone and moonlight, until the world narrowed to touch and breath and fire. Cassian unfastened the buckles on her chest plate with care, not urgency. His hands, calloused and bruised, moved like he knew every piece of her, not just her body, but the weight she carried. The pain. The grief. Selene pressed her palm to his chest, where his heart thundered. "You make me remember what hope feels like, even when I don't believe in it," she whispered. He leaned into her hand. "You make me want to be more than just angry." Clothes fell away like old titles, like broken chains. They moved together slowly at first, cautious, reverent. But that gave way to urgency, to the truth of what they had never said aloud. In the open air, on stone still warm from fire, they claimed each other, not with possession, but with devotion. They did not speak. There were no declarations. Only breath and flesh and the soft gasp of discovery. Selene's fingers traced every scar. Cassian kissed every bruise. Their love was not perfect. It was not gentle. It was real. It was the kind born in blood and fear, in sacrifice and fire. Something raw and unyielding. A promise not of safety but of choice. When it ended, they lay tangled in one another, cloaks beneath them, bare skin against stone. The wind swept through the tower's broken windows, but it could not steal the heat they had built. Cassian stroked her hair, his voice low. "I don't know what comes next." "No one does," Selene murmured. "But I know this, whatever we face it together. He looked at her, and in his eyes she saw not the rebel, not the weapon, not the heir of a broken name, but the man who had chosen her again and again, even when the world tried to make her unlovable. Selene traced the line of his jaw with a fingertip. "You're mine, Cassian Merrow." Not as a claim. As a truth. He caught her hand and kissed it. "And you're mine, Selene Veylor." Flame and fury. Heart and blade. They stayed there long after the fires dimmed and the sky lightened into the pale lavender of morning. Not speaking. Not sleeping.
Chapter 10. The Warden's Price.
Smoke curled into the sky from the shattered ruins of the West Outpost, a black banner drawn across the dawn. It was the first Dominion stronghold to fall in a generation. And with it, something stirred in the city beneath the citadel, something louder than whispers, stronger than fear. Hope. Not the fragile hope of prayers and silence. The dangerous kind. The kind that fought back. Selene walked through the lower city at dusk, cloak pulled tight, eyes lowered. But the people had already begun to look up. Mothers murmured stories to their children, not of saints, but of rebels. Old men sharpened blades that had gathered rust for years. And here and there, scrawled in soot or scratched into stone, was a simple symbol, a circle split by a dagger. She passed a child no older than 6, crouched in the gutter, twisting scraps of red cloth into a doll's sash. When the girl caught Selene's glance, she smiled, a crooked, gap-toothed thing, and tucked the sash away like a secret. Selene's throat tightened. Hope. Terrible, burning hope. Cassian found her near the cracked fountain square. His fingers brushed hers in passing, a touch, a tether. "Word from the North Districts," he said. 2 outposts raided. Supply lines torched. Even the ferrymen are refusing Dominion tolls. Selene's pulse skipped. Too soon. Too fast. "We're not ready," she said. "They are," Cassian answered quietly. "They've waited their whole lives for someone to tell them it's allowed. To hope." So had she. That night, they gathered in the ruins of a chapel blackened by fire, stone ribs arching overhead, stained glass long shattered. Rain fell in uneven rhythms through the broken ceiling, dripping onto the altar where maps lay scattered like old bones. Wax smeared the corners. Blood dotted the edges. In place of holy relics, there were supply routes, weak points, troop estimates, the liturgy of war. Marathorn, hard-eyed and unflinching, stood at the altar like a battle priest. She leaned over the maps and dragged her dagger through a red-marked corridor, a narrow artery between 2 districts. "We hit the south gates," she said. Her voice was gravel and steel. "Cut the citadel's spine. Without their reserves, the high bastion falls." It was sound. Strategically sound. A blow that could shatter the Dominion's grip on the city core. Selene stood a pace behind, still streaked in ash, her hair damp from the rain. Her hand rested lightly on the hilt of her blade, though her body sagged with exhaustion. Hours later the candlelight was lower now, the chapel colder. The burn on her side throbbed in quiet rhythm with the falling rain. But something in her hesitated. It was the right move, politically, tactically. And yet, she felt it coming. A change in the air. The cost. The answer. The chapel doors slammed open. Wind roared through the open archway. Rain curled across the stones. Marathorn entered without ceremony, her dark cloak soaked through, her boots caked in city mud. 2 scouts trailed behind her, pale, wide-eyed, and shivering like dogs kept too long in the cold. Marathorn didn't speak. She crossed the chapel floor with long, sharp strides and tossed a scroll onto the altar. The wax seal was black as coal, imprinted with the Dominion's triple crown insignia. Cassian stiffened beside Selene. Mara's mouth tightened. Selene didn't move. "He's here," Marathorn said. Her voice was low, steady. But even that steadiness couldn't hide the undertow of fear. "The Warden," she added. A name. And yet the air grew colder, as if the chapel stones themselves recognized it. Selene reached for the scroll. Her fingers were steady, but only through will. She cracked the seal and unrolled it. No titles. No preamble. Only a line: for every act of rebellion, 10 lives shall be taken. Submit or burn. Beneath it, a list. Names. 37 of them? Selene read them. Each one. Her mouth moved, but no sound came. Children. Midwives. Bakers. A teacher who once taught her letters. No crimes. No trials. Just a warning. Carved in flesh. Amari turn. She remembered her. Bent-backed and sun-wrinkled, always carrying orange peels in her apron. She'd worked in the palace kitchens, once. Called Selene Little Storm. Now she was payment. The silence grew dense. Even Mara didn't speak. Mara Thorne stepped forward. They were rounded up at dawn. Hang from the old aqueduct. No announcement. Just display. Cassian's jaw clenched. He looked away. The Warden doesn't need to crush our army, Mara Thorne continued. He just needs to break the people's will. Make them fear us more than they hate him. Selene closed the scroll. Her hands trembled once, then went still. She folded the parchment with a slow, deliberate precision and placed it on the altar like a prayer no god would answer. Outside, thunder cracked. Water ran down the chapel walls like tears. No one moved. The war room, if it could be called that, had frozen around her. Even the rain seemed to pause. Mara was the one who broke the stillness. "We can't let this dictate our strategy," she said. Her voice was low, firm. Not heartless, just practiced. "We strike the citadel. We show strength, not weakness. If we hesitate now, we lose everything." Selene didn't answer. She looked again at the map. The route Mara had carved into. The artery into the heart of the Dominion. Blood for blood. But she also saw the names. Laid bare. Still echoing in her head. Jaron. Mayrith. Thomas. And now Amari. What did it mean to lead? To burn? To survive the fire, you said? She felt Cassian's gaze, quiet, waiting, patient. He always waited for her to choose. The rain thickened. Somewhere distant, a bell rang, a false alarm, or maybe just wind through broken copper. Selene stepped to the altar. She picked up a small blade, not hers. It had been left beside a map, or an offering. And she carved a line of her own into the route Mara had drawn, a new path. Flanking. Harder? Slower. Through the old workers' quarter. Past the aqueduct. "Then we do both," she said. Her voice was iron. Mara blinked. "Both?" Selene nodded. "We strike the citadel. But we pass through the quarter they bled this morning. We show the people we saw it. That we carry it. That we answer it." Cassian's voice was quiet. "You'll lose time. We'll gain loyalty," Selene replied. "And I won't ask the people to burn for us while we walk above their ashes." She turned from the altar. "This rebellion isn't just fire. It's memory." She looked at Mara Thorne. "Send runners to the quarter. Tell them to leave their doors open." Then to Mara, "Prepare the second route." Mara hesitated, just for a moment. Then she nodded. "As you command." Selene stepped out into the rain. It washed the blood from her hands. But not her mind. Above her, lightning split the sky. The Warden had written his warning in flesh. Selene would write her answer in fire, and names no empire could erase. Selene stood at the edge of the crowd. The city did not cry out. It watched. Watched 10 lives turn cold in the wind. Watched the black-helmed guards walk away without looking back. Watched the Dominion write its threat not in ink, but in breath and bone. Selene's fists clenched until blood welled in her palms. "These are the lives spent for your flame," a voice in her head whispered. But she did not look away. If she looked away now, it would mean she could be broken. She would not give the Warden that. Mara found her afterward in the ruined alley behind the chapel. "You can't stop now," she said roughly. "You can't show weakness." Selene didn't answer. Mara stepped closer. "The people are watching you, Selene. If you hesitate, what about the next 10? Selene snapped. Her voice was raw. "And the 10 after that? They die free," Mara said. "Not as slaves." Selene turned away before her hands betrayed her. Cassian found her later, standing in the rain. "You can't carry this alone," he said gently. "I have to. They're not dying because of you. They're dying because of the Dominion. Because of him." Selene didn't answer. She pressed her forehead against the cold stone. Eyes shut. Breathing shallow. "I don't want to become like them," she whispered. "You won't," he said. "Because you still care." He touched her face, just for a moment. No kiss. No vow. Just contact, steady, quiet, real. The blood oath between them pulsed faintly, like the memory of a heartbeat. Selene leaned into the warmth. And then she straightened. Eyes hard. Spine steel. The next night, word came, another execution. 20 hostages this time. Children among them. Selene gathered the rebels in the broken square. The fires guttered low, casting more shadow than light. Faces turned toward her, bruised, hollow-eyed, but here. She looked at them, smugglers. Farmers. Scorned nobles. Survivors. Not warriors yet. But choosing to be. She stepped forward. No raised dais. No banner behind her. Only truth. "I will not surrender," Selene said. Her voice rang clear. "I will not bow to fear. I will not let them teach us to break each other to survive." She drew her dagger, the one that had cut her blood oath, that had lit the fire in the outpost. The flame caught the blade's edge. "We fight," she said. "We strike first. We save them." A murmur ran through the crowd, low, rising, resolute. Cassian stepped beside her, blade already drawn. Mara followed, arms crossed, a soldier's pride in her gaze. Marathorn gave a low laugh from the shadows. And one by one, others stepped forward, each lighting a torch from the first. The Warden had brought war. Selene would bring fire.
Chapter 12. The Man Who Watches.
The Warden did not flinch as the rain soaked through his gloves. He stood atop the high parapet of Spire Bastion, the Dominion's southern watchtower, and gazed out over the dark fields and burned edges of the city. Below, the bodies still hung from the aqueduct. Ropes swayed. Necks snapped forward in unnatural angles. A child's boot had fallen into a drainage ditch, where it bobbed quietly in the runoff. The Warden watched. He did not blink. Behind him, aides shuffled papers and leather gloves, careful not to speak unless spoken to. The air inside the war room was warm, dry, perfumed with civility. Here, on the edge, where blood met stone, the cold reigned. He preferred it. The scent of wet ash. The sound of distant thunder. The way fear took root in silence. His name had arrived in Ashline not by trumpet or proclamation, but by whispers. And that was the way he wanted it. Fear does not require permission. Only repetition. A quiet cough behind him. He turned. A scribe, trembling, held out a parchment sealed with red wax. "The list," the boy said. The Warden took it without a word. He read each name. Not aloud. Never aloud. Words had power. Spoken carelessly, they became too familiar. Too human. He folded the list and handed it back. "Send a copy to the regional tribunal. They'll need records. Even for the dead." "Yes, sir." The scribe turned to leave. "And strike through Mari turn," the Warden added. The boy paused. "Sir?" She was known to the girl, he said simply. "Let them feel that. Let her wonder if it was personal." The boy nodded and disappeared into the dry warmth of the spire. The Warden turned again to the window. Through the curtain of rain, he could see the faint glow of rebel-held fires along the western edge. The outpost was gone. 37 soldiers. Dozens of civilians. And the west gate shattered. He had predicted as much. What mattered now was not the gate, but what the city remembered about how it was taken. Not the fire. But the cost. He descended the steps of the tower slowly, deliberately. His boots echoed in perfect rhythm. Past the armory. Past the prisoners. Past the quiet cells where those who once shouted now simply breathed. In the lowest vault, he entered his office. Not a room of luxury, a room of stillness. Stone walls. No windows. A single table. A small brazier. 4 chairs. 3 always empty. He removed his gloves and placed them neatly beside a bowl of black ink. He rolled up his sleeves. The ink was warm, scented faintly with copper and myrrh. One of the aides returned, carrying the wooden box. Unsealed, the warden said. The aide obeyed. The lid opened with a hiss of iron clasps. Inside, scrolls. Dozens. Each tagged with a name and a sigil. Rebel sympathizers. Suspected dissidents. Silent witnesses. He selected 3. Tonight's messages. Not to the rebels, to the city. To the mothers who still closed their shutters. To the merchants who fed both sides. To the priests who preached neutrality. To the children who dreamed. He did not raise armies. He raised choices. Silence or ruin. Submission or spectacle. He dipped the brush and began to write. No threats. No demands. Only truths. The fire does not protect you. It only consumes. Remember the peace. Remember who kept it. The first scroll was finished. Then the second. They chant her name now. Soon they will cry it in mourning. And the third, addressed not to Selene, but to the house of Veylor, you open your doors to ghosts. What happens when they do not leave? He paused only once, when the ink nearly smudged. A flicker of anger. Rare. Not because of the rebels. Not even because of the outpost. But because of what he had read in the latest scout report. Selene hadn't turned back. She hadn't lashed out. She was rerouting. Taking the long way through the workers' quarter. Marching past the very bodies he'd hung as warning. She was answering him. Not in kind. But in presence. The warden's lips parted, not a smile, not quite. But something colder. Deeper. This is what makes her dangerous, he murmured. His second in command, a pale woman named Sereth, stepped into the doorway. She's pushing through the quarter now. The people are opening their homes. Giving her bread. Bandages. The warden nodded. Strike at the citadel? Within days. Losses? Acceptable, Sereth said. But the city's shifting. Not fast. Not loud. But turning. He stood. The next names, he said, must be closer. Closer? To her. He returned once more to the tower as night fell. The wind had risen. The banners of the Dominion whipped violently in the dark. He stood at the edge again, watching the distant glow. He imagined her there, bloodied, defiant, standing among the people he'd marked for fear. She will burn, he thought. But only when she believes it's her idea. He whispered the word into the wind, not a curse. Not a threat. A promise. Selene. And the storm answered. The candle burned low in the vaults. The warden leaned over a new list, ink not yet dry. The names had not yet been announced. He always waited, not for timing, but for precision. Fear required rhythm. Too fast, and it became noise. Too slow, and it decayed into hope. Across the table sat Sereth, silent. She'd learned well not to interrupt his silences. They chant her name, he said at last. Like it means something. Sereth's lips barely moved. It does. To them. The warden looked down at the list. Then at the ink-stained gloves in the brazier, burning slowly. The scent of myrrh and copper curled upward. Then we take names from the chant. He dipped the brush again. Not children this time. Not merchants. Symbols. A rebel torchbearer in the river wards. The smith who melted Dominion locks. The widow who stitched the first banner. He wrote not for revenge, but for memory. Let her watch their names vanish. Let her feel the cost of every cheer. Sereth shifted. If you go too far, he raised one gloved finger. They will hate me, yes. But that hate will divide them. Those who can bear the fire, and those who beg for peace. He sealed the scrolls in ashcloth. Then rose, towering in the vault's candlelight. This is not war, he said. This is equilibrium.
Chapter 13. Blood in the Dust.
20 hostages knelt in 2 lines, heads bowed beneath crimson hoods, hands bound, back straight in terrified silence. And beside them, him. The warden. A mountain of dark steel and silence. He stood motionless, executioner's blade draped across his broad shoulders like a cloak, his helm black and featureless, no eyes, no mouth, only reflection. Selene couldn't look away. This wasn't a battle. This was a performance. A ritual. A declaration. Behind the platform, soldiers in Dominion black paced the perimeter, their armor etched with the crown sun insignia. Their boots struck the stone like hammers on a tomb. A single crow cawed overhead. No answer came. Even the sky was afraid. Cassian slipped beside her, silent as shadow. His breath warmed her ear. We're in position. Selene nodded once, not trusting her voice. She felt her pulse in her throat, her wrists, her ribs. Every part of her wanted to run, and every part of her refused. Mara Thorne arrived next. The general wore no armor, only a black band tied tight around her upper arm, the rebellion sign of the willing. Her sword gleamed at her side. We strike fast, Mara said, her voice grim and sure. 2 minutes from breach. Get the hostages, or don't come back. Selene looked past them at the rebels, ex-soldiers with hand-me-down blades. Cobbled together armor. Merchants with crossbows. A priest clutching a firebomb. Thieves and smiths. Dreamers. Not an army. A promise. This isn't just a rescue, she said softly. It's a reckoning. We show them that fear ends here. Cassian brushed her hand, a touch, a vow. You lead, he murmured. We follow. Selene reached beneath her cloak, drew her dagger. The same blade that had bled her oath. The same that had cut free the bound. The sun began to rise, pale and bloodless. She gave the signal. Chaos erupted. Mara's group surged into the square from the north, a ragged charge of fire and fury. The Dominion soldiers barely turned before blades met bone. Crossbows snapped. Smoke bombs burst in blooms of choking ash. The rebels roared. Selene's team flanked from the east, cutting through the old marble archway into the heart of the square. She ran like fire incarnate, no fear, only purpose. They reached the platform as the first executioner raised his blade. Selene's dagger sang. She lunged, drove the steel beneath his ribs, twisted. The man dropped soundlessly. Cassian leapt past her, cutting down another guard before his sword left the scabbard. Move! Selene shouted. Cut them loose. The hostages stirred, dazed, trembling. Selene slashed bonds. Dragged them to their feet. One child clung to her arm, eyes wide and wordless. She gritted her teeth and shoved him toward the sewers. Go! More rebels spilled onto the stage. Arrows hissed. Blades flashed. Mara's banner, the black sun, rose high above the clash. But so too did the enemy's numbers. The Dominion rallied. New ranks poured into the forum, fresh, organized, unafraid. They came in silence, their helmets polished, boots perfectly in step. The Warden's elite. Selene turned, just in time to see Mara drop her second opponent, blood spraying in a wide arc. But then, bolts flew. 3 found their mark. Mara staggered. No. Selene screamed, but the battle swallowed her voice. Their eyes met across the chaos. No words. Just that steady gaze, the same she'd worn in Firelight, in war councils, in Defiance. Go. Live. Win. Blood bloomed across her chest. Mara fell to her knees. And still she struck, dragging one more soldier down with her. Selene froze for half a second, until a blade hissed past her cheek, biting air. She turned, screamed orders. Cassian. Move. He was already dragging hostages toward the sewer grate, teeth gritted, blood slick on his tunic. 2 rebels followed with torches. Another fell behind them, coughing blood. Selene looked once more toward Mara's fallen body. Then she ran. They plunged into the sewers, wet stone, the stench of mildew and old ash. The sounds of pursuit faded behind them, swallowed by ancient tunnels. Selene stumbled into the dark, her body aching, her soul screaming. They had saved the hostages. They had lost Mara. And it hurt, more than she had expected. More than she could yet understand. They emerged in the Undercity just before dawn. Ragged. Bloodied. Alive. Selene collapsed against a wall of damp brick, the chill biting through her bones. Cassian sank beside her, streaked with soot, breathing hard. He cradled his side with one hand, the other still smeared with another man's blood. 17 made it, he said quietly. 3 didn't. Selene's heart twisted. She shut her eyes. Too many. Not enough. Around them, freed prisoners whispered names. Rebels wept. A woman prayed aloud to a god Selene had never known. The citadel's bells began to toll above, loud, low, furious. Not mourning. Vengeance. Cassian's hand found hers. She gripped it like lifeline. And then she stood. Her knees trembled. Her voice cracked. But still, she spoke. To those we lost, she whispered. To those we saved. To those still waiting. She raised her dagger once more, no longer a weapon but a symbol. Not for vengeance. Not for survival. A pause. Breathless. Broken. For the ones who still believe. And somewhere deep inside her, the blood oath stirred, not pain, not fire.
The arrival.
Ash still hung in the morning air, thin as breath, soft as regret. The fires had gone out, but the heat lingered. Charred stone, broken glass, scorched banners, they were the aftermath of survival, not victory. And in the square beneath the shattered dome, the rebellion waited in silence. Selene stood at the edge of the stone platform, arms crossed, cloak drawn tight against the wind. She watched her people, bruised, bone-tired, but alive. The flames that had consumed the Dominion's records still echoed in their eyes. Cassian joined her quietly. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Behind them, a runner approached. From the northern quarter, the boy said, panting. He's alive. Kale. They pulled him from the vault. The warden took him. Cassian's expression didn't change, but his jaw set hard. Selene said nothing. He's joined them, the runner added. They're calling it redemption. A traitor's repentance. Cassian exhaled slowly. Then he'll be on the front lines. Would you kill him? Selene asked. He looked at her. Only if he makes me. The runner left. The silence returned. But it wasn't empty now. It was full of old memories, frayed loyalties, and something colder, consequence. Footsteps echoed across the square. 2 figures emerged from the eastern alleyways. The first was tall, lean, wrapped in a travel-stained cloak. Duran, the blade master, moved like water over stone. He carried no banner, but the sword at his side gleamed like old judgment. The second was broader, heavier, with a deep scar across his cheek and a perpetual frown carved into his face. Corlin, former blade master of House Veylor, now a defector. He limped slightly but carried himself like a boulder refusing to fall. They stopped before Selene. "We came as soon as word reached us," Duran said. "This city bleeds. But it breathes." Corlin grunted. "We saw the fire from the ridgelines. If you're burning it down, someone better be ready to hold the blade." Selene nodded. "We need discipline. We need fighters who can survive what's coming." "Then you call the right ghosts," Duran said. "Not ghosts," Cassian muttered. "Knives." The two men exchanged a look. Perhaps a fragment of mutual respect, or just sheer exhaustion. Selene turned to the square. "Train them. Shape them. We hold the outer wards until the next wave." Duran bowed his head slightly. Corlin cracked his knuckles. "We start at dusk. If they can't hold a blade, they'll learn to block one." Selene let the moment linger. Then she walked to the edge of the platform and looked out over the battered city. Ash drifted like snow. But in the distance, dawn was breaking. She didn't speak again. She didn't have to. Let the city breathe. Let the rebellion remember why it lived. Let the fire wait. For now. That night, after the last drills, Duran and Corlin sat by a low fire near the edge of the camp. Sparks drifted upward, swallowed by the dark. Neither spoke at first. The silence was not awkward, it was earned. Shared. Finally, Corlin reached for a battered flask and passed it across the fire. "You still move like the court never fell," he muttered. Duran accepted the flask but didn't drink. "And you still hit like you're trying to break the world." Corlin snorted. "Maybe I am." The fire cracked. Wind whispered through the ruined stone. Duran stared into the flames. "I thought I'd buried this part of myself. The teaching. The fight. But it doesn't die, does it? It just waits." Corlin looked away. "It dies when we do." Duran turned his gaze to the tents. "Some of them won't last a week. But a few. A few have that edge. The ardent girl. The twins with the iron grips," Corlin said. "The one with the stutter who doesn't blink," Duran added. "The redhead who tripped in the mud but still held her stance," Corlin muttered. "That one's trouble." "The good kind," Duran replied. They both nodded. The fire shifted. For a moment, neither looked like a warrior, just two tired men with too many ghosts. "Why did you come back?" Corlin asked. Duran thought for a moment. "Because she reminded me what loyalty used to mean. And because the fire hasn't gone out yet." Corlin took a long drink. "She's young. Idealistic. This kind of hope usually gets people killed." Duran glanced at him. "So does despair. At least this way, they fight." Corlin chuckled dryly. "Still quoting the old training halls?" "Still listening," Duran said. Corlin stared into the flames, face unreadable. "You remember Nealon?" "How could I forget? He froze on the drawbridge. You dragged him back to safety. And you told the captain I did it to protect the banner. You'd have been lashed otherwise. You always did hate the rules. Only the ones written in blood." The fire cracked louder. Wind rose, sweeping ash across their boots. Duran finally took a drink. "We're not young anymore, Corlin." "No," Corlin said. "But we've still got edges. Then let's sharpen them." They sat without speaking after that. Just fire. Just ash. Just memory.